I was like just in a deep kind of dark place. And I think a lot of people get there for all sorts of reasons. And like, I'm fortunate that it was like selling a company, like for a lot of money. Like I'm definitely fortunate for that. But that also like almost made it like, I'd be sitting there like, why the fuck am I depressed right now? Dude, I mean, I was doing ketamine therapy. I was going to therapy twice a week, journaling, and you anticipate such a euphoric, crazy dopamine hit of like joy in this like destination that you want to get to, and then in anything you get there and it's just not it.
Okay, My Muscle Project, welcome back to a Zoom podcast. It's been a long time since we've done one of this, so it had to be someone pretty special to get back on. You may not have heard of Jake, but you've definitely heard of his brand, MVMT watches, probably the biggest watch brand in the last probably decade, really, that's especially for a millennial generation. So we want to jump into the business side of that, of course, today, but what's a business without a good story from the founder? So Jake, why don't you give us a little bit of background, maybe share some stories that you haven't said on other podcasts, so we got something unique that we can clip. But yeah, obviously what you've done is incredible, and it's great to have you on. It's definitely an honor. And man, we've got loads of questions. So why don't you start? Tell us a bit about your kind of upbringing, yourself, and then I'll follow up some other questions.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Nice to meet you guys. Yeah, I mean, early on I kind of knew that school wasn't going to be an area that I excelled at. Just ADD, just off the walls, couldn't keep track of anything that I didn't really care about. And my dad was entrepreneurial, never really had anything that hit, but was always kind of trying to push me down that direction. So growing up, had, sold candy in my backpack at school, created, little bracelets, and walked down the neighborhood trying to sell, bracelets to parents and moms, and painted curbs, and I mean, just everything in between. And yes, I think, when I was about 16, 17, I stumbled into a t-shirt business, basically, that led me, and I can get into all this in a sec, but basically led me into learning a lot about e-commerce. This is before Shopify was a thing. This is before Instagram. I mean, it was like MySpace days. Buying something online was still kind of a question mark, but I had these t-shirts, and someone asked me, hey, like, where can I buy them? Do you have a website? And I said, okay, let me see if I can figure that out. And created a website, and started doing some marketing, started selling t-shirts online. And then that kind of led me down the e-commerce route, and which ultimately led into movement, which, yeah, I mean, I can dive into it even deeper, but.
Yeah, cool. I did hear something on another interview that you did. Your dad's company went under in 2009, I think, after the GFC. You mentioned. What was that experience like? Obviously, I'm not sure how old you were then, but I imagine you were young. What was that like as a family, kind of going through that, and how did you kind of recover? And I'm almost surprised it didn't like throw you off business. It almost pushed you into it more, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think so. I had a business, basically. So I guess I'll just jump all back into it again. So to start, just to take a step back, I went on eBay and ran into these t-shirts on eBay that lit up to sound, basically. So they had like battery packs in them, this sewed in like pouch on your chest, this little panel, and would light up. You might have seen them now. I mean, they're all over the place, or at least were kind of a novelty product. You see it like Disneyland and stuff like that. But at the time, no one had seen it. So kind of went up to my dad's, like, bought one, showed my dad. He thought it was cool, and said, hey, I'll fund this. We'll put up your car as collateral. If you don't sell them, then I get to sell your car. And I was off to the races. Went to Alibaba, figured out how to source these light up t-shirts. Never done that before in my life, but just kind of went with it. And then again, one thing led to another, and started this website with this clothing brand that I was selling, I don't know, thousands of dollars of t-shirts a month at that point. And when the economy crashed in my dad's business, he had that for like 23 years, like 50 employees. He did well, but it wasn't like, everything was very low margin business. He was doing like credit related things. And so when that crashed, it was kind of like, all right, like, we're not going out to eat anymore. you guys have to, pack lunches every single day. Just life kind of changed quite a bit. I don't even fully comprehend it. It was more so, I think they did a good job at like not letting us feel
Yeah.
that impact as much as it was. I saw it on their faces, and the level of stress for them, not knowing where they're going to get the next paycheck. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, so I was the oldest. I was 16, and fortunately, I had this business that like was making money, and I could kind of just, I was still living the life that I needed to at 16, 17, which was going to the movies and buying clothes every once in a while at PacSun, whatever it was. So it didn't impact me that much, but my parents, I definitely saw them impacted. But again, I think seeing that, feeling that, started to like put the fear in me and motivate me that like, hey, don't take anything for granted. And like, just because it's working one day doesn't mean, it's there forever type of thing.
Yeah, that must have been an interesting experience. How many siblings do you have?
I have a little brother and little sister.
Okay. And do you think there was so actually maybe I should ask this first. Did your dad then start a new business, or then did he become an employee?
So I kind of saw him try and start start up different businesses. And, just with anything, I mean, timing has a big piece of it. And I think with the economy where it was, like, it was difficult to start another business. And yeah, kind of like tried things, but nothing really hit the same way. And ultimately, yeah, he had to go and figure out like become an employee, or, he ended up doing real estate, but like, never had done real estate before. So it's kind of a different world. But that was like, 3 or 4 years of like spending money, kind of savings to try and start up a business, bootstrap businesses. And unfortunately, just with the economy and everything else, it just, wasn't able to kind of hit.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And then your siblings, are they in business as well, or did they take the entrepreneurial streak, or was that just you ran the flag by yourself?
I'm sorry, say again.
The your siblings, your younger siblings, did they start businesses, or is it just you?
My sister definitely like played around and with some businesses, probably after movement. I think after movement they were like, oh shit. But again, I think like, my skill sets, my sister's great at sales, where I'm not the sales guy. I'm not the extrovert. I'm more of that creative introvert. And my sister's probably, and I think for me, that actually excels in a business where you're starting something behind your computer online, trying to think of this idea, digital marketing. I mean, that was really what, like, that was probably my biggest skill set right there. So for her, I think she struggled, but I mean, she built a business. It wasn't what, movement, or, she's not continuing doing that today.
Yeah, interesting. So transitioning into movement, obviously, I'd like to hear the more detail of the story of how you met your co-founder. So yeah, share that story, and then also wanted to know, what was it when you first met? Was it like you're so opposite to me, because you guys were young when you met, same as Raf and I, pretty young when we met. I imagine there wasn't a conscious like, you complement my skills so well. You're so different to me. We'd make a good tag team. It was more, or was it more, we just get along really well. I like you. We've got a good idea. Let's do it. And then just by chance, you happen to, kind of offset each other's weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, when I basically, like, my identity was tied to being a business owner from 16 years old. Like in high school, people knew I had a business. In college, I'd go around to fraternity parties and hand out business cards. Wasn't really kind of got made fun of for doing that. But that was who I was. That I wasn't good academically. So, and weirdly enough, it was hard to like connect with people at that time. It just entrepreneur online, like, just wasn't really. It's hard to find. And I met my business partner as he was my roommate, basically a mutual friend. Invited them to be our roommates, and then the second I met him, he was just like fascinated with the business that I had. Even though at that point it was kind of a dying business, but he was still just fascinated with what I was doing, how I did it. And I think just that even connection of like, oh, this guy actually cares about, how to make money, entrepreneurship? Are you willing to sacrifice, what you're willing to do to get to the next level? And I think the longer I got to know him, he ended up starting some things, and I got to see kind of firsthand, like, what he brought to the table in terms of just kind of doing the dirty work and getting shit done, and really like starting to realize like a lot of the things that I didn't love to do, he actually, I don't know if he loved to do them, but he'd do them. And I think he probably loved to do them more than I did. And then, the marketing stuff, like that was just where I already geeked out on. And so I would say that we actually complemented each other pretty well. But it wasn't like, hey, you compliment me. It was just kind of like, you've seen what I've done. I've seen what you do. How about we like put our brains together and like really make this work?
And was there a mutual interest in fashion? So like with Lockie and I, obviously there was a big mutual interest in fitness first, and then we got into the business. But like, were you talking about fashion, or were you just like talking about business all the time?
Not really, man. I mean, I think not really. I mean, we had other ideas. We wanted to create a boxed water, like kind of like what you see today, boxed water. Like, I don't know what they have in Australia, but that type of like,
Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
different types of brands. And we had a rendering for that before it was even a thing. And we had an agency idea. I mean, he had a wallet company. I would say in terms of fashion, it was just like, I think we realized like, what do we know? Like, what are we consumers of, and what makes sense? And fashion was like one thing that, like, I wouldn't say that when neither of us had the money to be fashionable, and maybe that's what made us the right consumer for movement. But I think fashion just was like the closest thing that we kind of had. And watches specifically, that there was one watch brand that was pretty big in Nixon watches, which was big in California, and specifically actually like San Diego, where my business partner was from, that we both like knew that brand and loved that brand, but also understood what that brand was missing and lacking. And just as a total addressable market of like, watches to younger people, or just people who want a more affordable watch, like fashion was just something that I guess like, yeah, we were able to like connect with that. So, but no, I wouldn't say that like I love fashion. Don't get me wrong. Like I enjoy like having some sort of creative expression, but I wouldn't say that like that was a passion of mine or his.
So you guys you weren't into horology. Like you weren't obsessed with watches. You didn't like study them and understand the mechanics and stuff. You just saw more of a hole in the market and thought, we love business. Let's try and exploit this idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's probably the best way to put it. I think, yeah, we really just, my brain was always thinking, I'll speak for myself. My brain was definitely always thinking about like, and I say his too, actually, like we're thinking about, yeah, how are we going to make a living? How are we going to make money? Like, what are ways that we can invest the capital or the means that we have right now to go and like build a business? And honestly, I almost think that like, I think that was actually a benefit to us to some degree, because like, oftentimes I see these creatives who love something so much that like, they're thinking about themselves as like, they're solely thinking about themselves and not like the bigger picture. And they get sucked into like, no, that's just what you want in terms of a product, not what like a larger market wants. So I think ironically, not caring about like needing to understand the intricacies of what makes a good watch was important, but like nerding out about the watch components would have probably been more challenging. We would probably hitting a different market than what movement actually accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely seems that way. And then you'd be competing with Swiss watchmakers, right? Who have been doing this shit for hundreds of years, and that's a hard game to crack. So you bootstrapped movement, which is, pretty unique in today's climate. How did you get the initial capital? I mean, it sounds like you were maybe piecing together a few revenue streams here and there. But what was like the initial investment that you guys placed that was like, okay, we're definitely doing something here? Like, was it the first order? Was it, you paid a designer for something? Like, what was the first small amount of capital, if you can say, that made it real?
I mean, shit, probably the first thing we ever had was like, yeah, I probably paid $100 for a logo and a website with, I remember we had this picture of a watch on it, but like I blurred it out because I knew Photoshop and stuff just from teaching myself that stuff. And So we just had this like landing page, coming soon, movement watches with like a watch that you couldn't, it was undistinguishable as to what watch it was. That was $100. And then the down payment for the samples was, call it, I don't know what the samples ended up costing for, 10 samples. It was like $5,000 or something like that. Which Kramer had a business that was kind of working at the time. And so he was able to like basically fund that. And he was doing that while I was kind of like, I guess running some of the creative stuff, just getting stuff ready, thinking about the Kickstarter campaign. I mean, we both like worked on it collaboratively, but he had a business that was actually making money. Movement was just an idea. So in the beginning, he was probably thinking about that a little bit more. And then as it came closer to inception, he and I both like spent, all of our time on Movement.
Yeah, that was in the lead up to the crowdfunding that you've done. And we actually did a crowdfunding thing. I was talking about at dinner last night a while ago as well. So we kind of know what that was like. We did like a training journal for like people that are like really into fitness, our listeners and stuff. And it was, I mean, it was like, what did we raise? 33,000?
Our target was 20 and we got like nearly 35 grand.
Yeah. And so it was a good experience.
It was good.
And
we covered like 1,000 books.
Yeah. And crowdfunding is a really interesting thing to go about. And that's, I read you got rejected twice by Kickstarter. Why did they not accept your idea? What, did it violate some kind of policy?
Dude, to this day, I still don't know. And I honestly think Kickstarter hated me because I had another business that had done 16 grand and then I got kicked off the same, like during halfway. So I had made 16 grand and then all of a sudden I was on track to do 30, 40, kicked me off. And then Movement applied. They said no. They basically, at the time, it was like, you need to have some sort of innovative product. Although like, there was also this brand called Original Grain, which was a wooden watch. Call it innovative, I guess, but like I didn't understand why like we weren't innovative and they were. And I think one of the things was like you have to come up with a completely custom design, which we did. Anyways, denied us again, and then I mean that was like I remember that moment. Like that's like it's just a specific moment you kind of like can't forget. Driving, get the email, your heart drops, you read it, starts fucking screaming, fuck. So upset, man. Like, I mean, you just feel like all this, like you have an idea and it's like, you like have a lottery ticket, but you have nowhere to cash it. You're just like, fuck. But like, we knew that there was Indiegogo, which just wasn't, it was like, it's where like crowdfunding campaigns kind of went to die because most of them that went there didn't make money.
Yeah.
And we had spent so much time studying Kickstarter that we're like, all right, we're just going to apply the exact same concepts, analytic, like everything that we had spent, studying the script, like everything was we thought was bulletproof or just like, whatever, if we make a fraction of what we'd make on Kickstarter, that's fine. Like, let's just do it. And like, we ended up raising like 300 grand on Indiegogo, which was like one of the top. It was us and like Bombas socks, which is now a massive multi-$100 million business as well. And those were like the two top fashion like brands on Indiegogo at the time.
That's nuts.
Do you think it's still a good place for startups to go to raise money? Obviously, there's like way more options now, but I mean, you still obviously prove that there is demand for the product.
Yeah, man. I get that question a lot. And it's like, I used to be so up to date as to what was being launched on these platforms. I'm not anymore. But what I'd say is like, if you don't have, if you need capital, like it's just time. And if you don't have that access to capital, like if you can go and raise $1 million or something, then go raise $1 million. But if you can't, if you don't have access to even like, 100 grand or whatever it is, whatever you need to start the business, then what other option do you have? I mean, there's other ways, but that at least it gets eyeballs on it. You get some emails, maybe it fails. That doesn't need to be where the road ends, but it's just like somewhere to start. And I don't know, sometimes I'm like you got to think smart, but like sometimes, and I don't know that it's the best place anymore, but as we stand here now, like I would say it can't hurt outside of like dedicating some time and energy to it. And for people who can't even execute on that, it's like, well, dude, I don't like, yeah. Then if you can't do that, then like, you're not going to be able to do whatever else it takes to start a business. So.
Yes, very true. So the aspect of Indiegogo and Kickstarter and crowdfunding, now some people may be unfamiliar with it, but typically how it goes is you're not buying equity in a company. You're kind of just buying the first run of a product. You're like saying, okay, watches, be the first one to own this watch or whatever. So you sold however many watches it was from that 300 grand. Then what was left over? And then how did you choose to spend that? Because I think obviously what you do with that is super critical, right? That's your, that's your oxygen, right? So you want to spend that wisely. So how did you, once you kind of fulfilled the orders, then how did you go, okay, what are we going to do next?
So, year one, I remember, so basically it was like 300 grand. I don't remember how much it cost for the inventory for what we knew we need, however many watches we sold. We each paid each other 10 grand because like he had initial capital that was deployed. I was in 5 grand of debt, plus some other things that I needed to just pay off and have money to survive. So we both took 10 grand, and which, like, again, like for me, it was like pretty much instantly gone. It wasn't even like I had it. And then we basically were like, all right, well, it takes a long time. It takes, call it 75 to 90 days to make these watches and get them delivered. We can either take the profit and just, for the most part, invest 80% of it back into more inventory and hope it sells, or we can like slow it down and keep the money and figure it out. We ended up buying the inventory and just trying to like figure it out as we go. And sure enough, like I remember we had a website the day the campaign ended, and we were able to we sold, basically watches every day after that. So it was like, not only did the traction from the campaign kind of continue, but also it was like, all right, how do we get press? How do we get, at the time, Instagram wasn't really where we were looking, but it was really press at that point, and today it would be like, where is my market? Where's my target market? How do I continue to talk to them? It could be referral based, whatever it is. So yeah, we spent, I call it 80-90% of that profit, just more inventory. And that helped us to continue to kind of fund the business.
And so you let organic traffic to the website after that continue to fulfill those orders. So you didn't touch the influencer marketing at that point. It wasn't on the YouTube stuff. There wasn't necessarily any press. It was just organic traffic from Google.
It was kind of from the campaign, fortunately. So it was like, okay. I remember like we first originally sold the watches for like $65 or something like that for for the first ever buyers. It was like an incentive. And then we launched them on the website. The day the campaign ended, we had a website that worked. It was on Magento, I remember, and it launched that night. So the campaign ends, and we were like, "Are we going to sell a watch? Is this where it ends?" Sure enough, we sell like 4 watches that night or that day, the day after the campaign ends. And then like 3 days later, we're like, "Okay, well, we can't keep selling them for like $65. We have to sell them for like a more appropriate price." So 95, $100 is where we lifted it to. And like, instead of 4 watches, we went down to like 3 or something, but we made more money because like we had better margins. So we're like, all right, that works. And then the traffic from the campaign, just from like people going to Indiegogo, trickled in. And then on top of that, we now had finished our campaign, and like we used that as like, hey, let's get some press hits on this. I had spent like hours just like scraping editors' information off the internet and on Twitter and everything else, just to basically, I had 200 emails, like probably 100 of them that could bounce back to me that weren't even real anymore. And 100 of them were just like editors. And I'd write this template, hello, and I'd blank, and then I'd type their name in.
Yeah.
Big fan of blank, type their name, and then
love your writing, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
Really speaks to me.
Dude, it was bad, man. But yeah, I'd send 100 emails and we get 5 hits. And yeah, the hits that we got weren't even necessarily relevant to like, I don't know. They were just like weird things, but like, listen, they gave us a little bit of traction, and then that traction gave us more traction. And then for the first year, we didn't spend I don't think we spent any money on marketing. It was just like, where can we go? How can we get press? Actually, that's not true. We didn't spend any money on like traditional like Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. It was like spend money on cool material, I think was a big one at the time, and like Uncrate and like some of these other things we like spend money on. But yeah, that was like early on.
So this is what year are we at now in the first year?
Like
this is
2013, I think.
Okay.
2013. You guys mind if I just grab some water really quick?
Go for it.
All right,
Yeah.
really quick. Sorry about that.
No, all good.
All good, man.
We were talking about, I was talking about the first year. So like, obviously you're kind of just, as all startups go, just kind of scrapping and, trying to stretch every dollar as far as it can go. At this point, when do you start getting some like real oxygen where you think, okay, we've got some runway here, we can be a bit more strategic? Maybe tell us, what was the point where you made your first hire?
Trying to think. So yeah, year one, it was like me, it was just me and Kramer. And then we found like basically a lot of our like first employees kind of came on as like almost not consultants, but like freelance. So year one, we found this guy who came on and I think he helped with some of the press related things, like just press outreach and just and yeah, so that was year one, and it was a part-time thing until we realized like, okay, we need more. And then year two, I think year two we needed help with customer service, so that's when like those were the initial ones there. But really out the gate, like our main functions for year one, year two were like marketing and customer service, right? Like marketing helped, and they were like basic junior marketing roles. It was like, I was running social media. Okay, I don't have time to do that anymore. Who can we hire to do that? I was reaching out to press. Can I pay someone like, if I pay someone, 60K, will they make 60K back minimum, right? And what in their role, which will allow me, I have that faith also more so in me, that I'm going to go and build the value of the company itself. Which like, yeah, I mean, that was super important to like the acceleration of movement.
Yeah, how do you, that's probably one thing that founders struggle with. In the beginning, you're kind of doing everything. And then at some point, as you start to hire your initial employees, you think, where's the best way to get help? And part of that figuring out that process is figuring out what you're best at. So at this point, you're still pretty young, right? You guys are still early 20s. And so not only are you developing as business owners, but you're just developing as people. Your personality is still developing. Like you're still trying to figure out your beliefs and your principles. So how are you figuring out, okay, I should actually spend time on this. I'm best with this, and Kramer's best with this. And how are you having those conversations?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it was more so like what could, yeah, I mean, I was constantly thinking about who could I hire someone to do a better job, or is there a part of the business that needs me as CEO, right? Like, and in terms of my side of the business, where it kind of got divided from like marketing and operations, we're like, marketing wise, I was like, it was okay, great. I'm good at running Facebook ads. I'm good at social media. I'm good at all these things, but I also have, 100 other things I need to do. And like, would it be better to just hire someone full time who's dedicated to this and also probably can teach me something? And that was kind of like the thesis behind every single hire. Like, sometimes it was bring someone in and teach them. But as we got bigger, it was like, who can I bring in who can teach me something, who already knows about this, but also just, I mean, really just someone who, yeah, if they can dedicate their entire time to this one function, they should be able to do it significantly better than me. And again, like where is my time as a CEO, as a founder? And my belief is like, yeah, your focus is like scaling the team. Who, like, what roles are necessary? Who do you need? Making sure that the business is, well capitalized, which means someone like, someone from a finance perspective, like looking at the business, projecting marketing, projecting inventory, projecting, even just like cash flow, all those things. And none of those were areas of my expertise. And that was also like, because I didn't understand the finance side of the business, I always like couldn't sleep at night because like I didn't know if the business was healthy. Like we were so profitable, which was great, but I couldn't really wrap my head around like, well, if we're making money every year, how come like we could be so low on cash one month? And it was just because, well, that's the month we had to pay for inventory. And it took a few months to like sell through that inventory. And once you sell through that inventory, you need to go and buy more inventory. And it was like, so getting someone who knew how to like, manage cash flow and project, accurately, all these roles and functions that, I mean, I think as a founder who doesn't know what they're doing, and like, I mean, I was 22 years old and we didn't know what we were doing. You get to a point where like you hit a ceiling and you go, like, I don't know, we're messing up, or like I feel like we're about to like really screw up or do something, or this is above our pay grade more or less. And it's having the self-awareness to look in the mirror and be like, this, like, I need to delegate and I need to trust someone. And I think that's a skill set in itself, not just being self-aware and being like, hey, I'm not the guy for this, but also being able to like find someone who is gonna, or him or her, who's gonna come in and like really run that role. And that's something you kind of just get better at. I think like you're gonna hire some people who like aren't the right people, or you're gonna interview certainly some people who aren't the right people. But it really just comes down to like, vetting them from a skill set perspective. And then also like what I and Kramer could do the best was just like a culture fit. Like, is this person, if I got stuck on a plane with this person for 18 hours to Australia, am I going to kill this person halfway through, or are they going to be, are we going to like connect and have some good conversations? It's going to be good.
It is far.
And did you take out an office or anything, or did you just, I don't know, it wasn't no Slack or anything, but was this all like one of the earliest remote companies?
Yeah. I mean, year one was completely remote. Me and my co-founder weren't even on the same roof. Year two, me and my co-founder got an apartment together in Venice.
Nice.
And then year three, we got like our first office. But yeah, even that was like, do we need an office? Well, real companies have offices. Well, we don't need a fucking office if we don't need it. It's 10 grand a month for an office. Why are we going to go spend in a 2-year commitment? Why do we need to go spend that money? But when you got to like 8 employees, and everyone was working remote, it made a lot of sense. Like, okay, all of us under one roof. And yeah, from there on out, we had an office.
There was a couple of things you said I really want to dive into. I think the details are important here. You said like at one point you're training up people kind of under your wing, and then there's a distinctive moment where you're thinking, okay, I actually need to bring someone in who's better than me here. At what point did you transition from, and when I say at what point, like can you give us an idea of roughly what the revenue was? Can you give us roughly how many employees you had, where you thought, okay, I'm bringing in people that are not quite as good as me and I'm training them into my role and I'm kind of mentoring them, versus like, I actually just need to bring someone in who is the expert in this area and they can almost teach me. And I don't really want to train this person. Like, I want to make sure they're a good culture fit, but like I'm kind of bringing in like a senior person who's got a resume here, not just some junior who we're kind of working together with. What was that kind of apex, or that defining moment?
Yeah, it's hard for me to like, when I talk to other companies, it's like Movement grew so fast that like when I talk about revenue, it's like, it's hard to be relatable. Year one, we did $1 million and we're profitable. Year two, we did 7 million. So like some companies don't get to 7 million for years or ever. So to say that you don't like to wait until you get to 7 million to hire some of the people, like just isn't necessarily realistic. But I think that like the caliber of people you probably get when you're 7 or 30 or whatever, like is probably higher, mainly because you can afford to pay them. So like, yeah, I think for as long as we could, like, until you hit like, I don't know, maybe it's 10 or 20 employees, like somewhere in that range, like you can kind of, you can kind of do what you're doing, delegate to people who maybe have some experience, but aren't like C-level execs, right? Who demand a 6-figure plus, salary. You can probably find someone who's just like had a role at another company, wants more either autonomy and wants to actually make a difference in a company. And like, yeah. And like, I think that's, so like just finding someone depending on where you are in your business is kind of like what I'd recommend. I think we didn't really bring in any C-level type person until, maybe he was like I don't know, I want to say 15th employee. And at that point we were a $30 million business. But again, I think before him, we brought in a director of e-commerce, I believe, and we brought in some managers in some other areas. And like, I think the issue we had is like, okay, these guys are all doing their job and like teaching me something and doing well, but like, who's leading all of them holistically? And like, that was the issue. Like, again, 23, 24 at the time, no managerial experience or leadership experience, like not what I would consider like, you know, a strength of mine to go and pound my chest and talk to the group and motivate. I was like more of that silent killer. But like, you know, we were able to get to like probably 10 to 15 employees before we had to hire that CMO. And I think, and yeah, so that where does that get a company? Like, again, I think it could be a couple million. It could be, I mean, you need to be able to like pay these salaries, but I do think that delegating and making sure that these people are like producing. Again, I think the logic to like, if I hire this person, are they going to make at least their salary back? Because if they're not, then like, you know, especially early days, you probably shouldn't have them on your payroll. I can't really think of many examples of where I would want them on my payroll, unless it was like the first year I know is going to be flat. But at a bootstrap company, like, I don't really know if you can afford to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, that's like one thing I definitely wanted to ask you about is like having that or having the leadership burden to run the company at such a young age. Like, how did you manage that in your own? How did you and Kramer manage that? I mean, you touched on it then briefly, but trying to lead people that are older than you at such a young age, you must have felt in some ways like, I don't know, say fraud is the right thing, but there must be some insecurities around, am I saying the right thing here? Do I actually believe what I'm saying here? Like, how did you have those how did you develop those leadership conversations? Or did you find it was just like, man, I got to make this happen. I got to mature faster. I got to get, you know, business coaching. I got to read these certain books. Like, how did you kind of evolve really quickly to kind of meet that leadership demand?
Yeah, I mean, you hire people who are smarter than you, who went to business school, who have run you know, tens of millions of dollars of budgets and been part of, you know, massive $100 million companies. And yeah, there's imposter syndrome. There's, you know, doubting yourself. There's, you know, where's the line of like my idea or their idea, and how do you like, you know, collaborate on that? I think hiring people who respect you is like, I mean, that's a must, right? Like, if you hire someone, you know, they may like probably think they're smarter, and like they probably are smarter in certain areas, but you're also like, you founded the business. And I think if I could go back and what I tell other entrepreneurs, and probably if I went back to even myself, it's like, hey, you started the business. There's an intuition that you as a founder have. You know, you have to hold on to that intuition, and you have to believe in that intuition. And like, they're going to be smarter and like have data to back things up sometimes, but like, you know, directionally, especially directionally, or employee, or, you know, like creative wise, like it needs to be, you know, think about where your strength is, and not ego, not I need to be the guy, but just like where you believe that your strength truly is as a founder, and where it's not. And I think sometimes like, yeah, there's probably times where I probably wasn't, I was more passive than I probably should have been. And not in like a aggressive or like confrontational way, just in things that I probably believed in, that I you know, it was like, it was not disputed isn't the best word, but just like, I mean, yeah, maybe disputed, or like there was a conversation around it that like, I didn't feel like I could back up outside of like, this is my belief as a founder. This is where we're going.
A gut feeling.
What's that?
Like a gut feeling that you had.
Yeah, like a gut feeling. And that's, you know, ultimately to some degree, that's kind of what gets you here. I mean, you know, it's like luck is part of it, but it's timing and identifying it, and like, and so you just understanding like that's part of your skill set. But at the same time, like I see founders I usually see founders on one side, like either side of the spectrum. It's like, you can't let go of shit and you need to be in charge and micromanage, which is like, in my opinion, like I hate seeing that, because it's like, I think it's an annoying way to lead. And like, I just don't believe in that leadership style. But at the same time, yeah, being too passive and just like letting people run wild is like, you know, you're gonna be spending money areas that you shouldn't. People are going to be taking advantage of you. It's just like, I mean, it's yeah. So finding somewhere in the middle is kind of a tough place, but that's kind of where I wanted to try and be as much as possible.
when you think back to the stages you're just talking about, the evolutions of bringing in, obviously the business was growing so quickly, and you're bringing in these senior people, obviously people that respected you and you respected them. Did you have evolutions of like, hey, I think this is my strength here, so I've like just brought this marketing guy in and he's like a C-level, and I thought I was sort of the marketing person, but now I realize he's the marketing person, I'm this guy, and then maybe a bit of time elapses and you go, oh shit, that's not actually me, I'm more this guy. Like, do you have distinctive evolutions within your role in the company, or did you kind of nail it from the start? You're like, nah, I'm the social media guy, and you just rode that all the way? What were maybe some of the evolutions there?
No, I think it was me trying to find myself professionally, and then also just externally from the organization. Like, I mean, up until even a year ago, man, like looking back and going, what was my superpower, right? Like, what was it about movement that made me, like, why did it work? Why did I, like, you know, and you start questioning yourself, you start asking yourself questions. And I think at the time it was, yeah, you start, dude, you start to, because you can't hold on to everything if you want it to grow. So you get out of the weeds of some things, and people start to question, you know, your opinion on certain things because you're not in the weeds. But so it's like this balance of, again, like people that need to respect you. You need to have the right authority over, like, I don't care, this is my, like, but it can't come from like an egotistical place, right? Where it's just like, no, I'm the boss, we're doing what I say. It has to come from like, you know, sometimes just, and I think maybe the difference is just like being self-aware of it versus not, is like, you know, knowing that sometimes everyone won't, not everyone needs to always agree. It's like, you know, but they need to respect your decision.
Right.
And I think I was like a people pleaser at times and wanted everyone to agree, which just was impossible in an organization. But like, I always, as a founder and someone who is delegating, I think, you know, for me, who was like, I'm not going to run, my goal wasn't to run movement for 20 years, right? I didn't want to have that business for 20 years because it wasn't fundamentally like something I enjoyed to do every single day. And it took me a long time to realize that. It wasn't like, I wouldn't say it was like as much of a passion as it was an amazing experience. And the highs gave me a lot of like dopamine hits and like made me love it at moments. But there was also a lot of like restless nights, and just like, I felt like I was always like, I was one text or phone call away from like a disaster. Like I could not escape that, man. Like no matter what, vacation, this, like I was always on, and like I literally felt like I couldn't turn off. And I think that's just like not a healthy way to live your life. And I mean, I'm fortunate, I'm grateful, but like, so like constantly I was always thinking about, yeah, what is my role as, you know, the founder, one of the founders, to like what can only I do as founder, right? And you'd hire a CMO, he'd handle like the marketing organization, he'd be having one-on-ones with marketing, you know, people. And it was like, okay, well, like, what can I do? Like, where am I? Okay, well, where's the business going? Where do I, as a founder, now see the business going? Is it retail? Is it, you know, a new category? You know, what hires do you think is necessary? Is it cross-border, you know, related things? So like, and none of those things necessarily are like an expertise, but it could just be like, as a founder, you're the only guy that can maybe like go on LinkedIn and, you know, message anyone and get a conversation with, or like get a, you know, ask a venture capitalist to intro you to something. Like that was a lot of just like almost like R&D. And part of it's also like leading the company. But again, and maybe this is just me not being, maybe this is imposter syndrome or whatever, but like I never looked at that was not my superpower, like public speaking, leading like the company. Like that was not my strength, but also it's being self-aware of those things. So like my CMO and our CFO really helped with those components, right? Like the CMO, a lot of the marketing organization was under our CMO, and he would be having a lot of meetings with the marketing organization, talking about marketing initiatives. Where I wish if I go back in time, I probably would have been more, pushed myself to be more loud and just like purposeful and inspiring around like directionally where I believe the business is going, outside of just marketing initiatives, just like where I see this industry, this product, the brand going, and so forth. But hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, it made sense. Yeah. And so during this whole period was like how was the relationship between you and Kramer? I imagined you know, you're both, again, young, going through personal evolutions, trying to handle all the stress of a company that's growing crazy fast, trying to make sure that, you know, you're both, you know, keeping the soul of what you started. How did that evolve? And were you having, what conversations were you having? Were you still trying to keep like a personal friendship together intact outside of the business, or was it just always about the business? And, you know, how did that all play out?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, you know, we really focused on different sides of the business, like different functions. So like we were, you know, he would be traveling for something and then I'd be traveling for something else. So like, you know, we were all, like, yeah, we're still friends, hanging out, like partying, like doing all the fun things together. But, you know, a lot of like the things that I'd be heads down on, presenting about this and that, you know, I also had the official title of CEO. So like, which like he was okay with like me being the guy who's going to go and do the public speaking stuff. Like, you know, neither of us were like, that wasn't our strength. So, but I knew like something, like we had, like, it was important to do some of these press related things or TV related things. So like, you know, but when it was like a commercial or something, we'd both jump on it. Right. Like, so I don't know, like we just kind of like divided and conquered. And, you know, there's for sure days where we'd get in tiffs and, you know, come back after we both settled down and be like, all right, this is like let's talk about it again. And like, yeah, we were able to get, I think no matter what, we were able to like kind of always move past whatever it is, disagreement or this or that we were talking about. Fortunately, we also like, once you get other people that you trust and allow to like sit at the table, which again, our CFO and CMO were, if there was a conversation about anything, it would be like, let's all get in the room and talk about it. And then it was like, whatever we all agree on, like that's going to be directionally like what like that's why we hired you guys. Like we're all going to do this as a team. And then I think that made it easier rather than just me and him, who like at times it's like, well, I heard this and I read this. It's like, okay, well, we both don't really know what we're talking about. And, you know, like early days we'd go and we'd set up calls with 5 other entrepreneurs, like founders, or 5 others, you know, CMOs, and we'd ask them kind of what we were dealing with, and we'd get 5 different opinions. And then after that, we'd be like, all right, let's do this, which is great, but not efficient. Right. So like we probably avoided big issues, but we didn't get answers quickly and move, which was also an issue. But at that time, it was probably, I mean, that was the right thing to do for sure.
And with this type of business, did one of you have to like obsess over the product and always be like, this watch was better than that watch, and that's how you were making strides in like, I don't know, reducing like returns or increasing referrals? Or was it, from what you said, it sounds mostly like your marketing, making sure you don't run out of money, marketing, making sure you can do a bigger order?
Yeah, well, in terms of products, so one of the bigger hires that we did is we hired a designer that actually came from Nixon, and he was like, yeah, so he was an all-star. And between him, and he was also like, the reason, you know, I loved him was because like he really respected our opinion, right, from a design perspective. Like he knew watches and design and everything, but like he really wanted to hear what we had to say and listen. And like, I mean, it was really great. So like when it came to product, that was probably like the most shared asset that like Kramer and I both worked on together. But with that said, like I'd say Kramer and the guy's name was Thomas, the designer, they probably obsessed over the intricacies more so than I did. Like I didn't spend the time over like the little colors and this and that. Like it was probably, can we all like sign off on this design, this aesthetic? Who are we marketing to? Let's move on from there. So
that's interesting. Well, I did want to go back to your employees again and growing the team. How many of your kind of core founding group, call it the first 15, 20 employees, like still evolved and came up through the company? And was it maybe none did, maybe a 0, but maybe of the ones that did, were some of them the people that you expected to, like you just like, dude, this guy has it and he's going all the way? Or was it like, wow, this guy came out of nowhere, something must have changed and he's just crushing it now and he should be with us here?
Yeah, I don't want to like forget anyone, and I won't say even names, but like there was a handful of people, you know, a couple specifically out the gate that like helped with like just, we hired them for like marketing related roles, and then they grew. Their marketing related roles like grew significantly within the organization, and it just became like they were impactful from a creative viewpoint as to anything that movement did and touched, and they were in the room for a creative like perspective always. And then there was other people who just like grinded and like wanted more than like where they started, and saw the opportunities. And I mean, over the years, I mean, a lot of them excelled in the different, learned different skill sets, took classes, really just grinded and I think they got inspired too by the growth. They're like, holy shit, like I'm part of this experience. Let me take advantage and like really maximize like what I'm able to like get out of this experience. So yeah, I mean, there a lot of them like really took it and ran with it. And almost all of the early day employees, like their roles expanded and grew into different functions. And I mean, some more than others, and some probably had the opportunity more than others. A lot of, business too is like, especially at startups, it's just like, I don't want to say politics, but it's just like, if there's already someone above you who's doing the job that you want, like you can't really, there's only so much to grow, in that direction, unless you're open to like other avenues. But a lot of people like, took on different roles, different functions just to expand their skill sets.
And how did you manage, I think this is always an interesting question, but how did you manage the friendships and the relationships with those early employees as the company grew so quickly? And where did you draw the line between, because you're also young. I imagine you're also young, right? You're similar age. I think it's different starting a business 35, you're hiring 20-year-olds, whatever. Maybe you're not going to be friends, but you probably were the same age. You probably shared a lot in common. You probably built a great culture together. For you, was there moments where you're like, what, maybe we've crossed the line a bit here. It's hard to discipline people that I'm really good friends with, and like we need to stop hanging out so much outside of work? Or did you take the very Richard Branson, like, let's all be family, let's all be friends, let's go party on islands together? Like, where did you find that balance that worked for you guys?
In the beginning days, we were all friends, having fun, partying, like, I mean, I don't know that like, I mean, I think, I don't know if it was just like everyone knew that this was like a big opportunity and like, let's not fuck this up. And, even though I say that, like, I know we probably got taken advantage of at times, not like intentionally, just like it is what it is, right? Like, we had like a relaxed kind of policy, more or less. Like there'd be some Fridays where people would be, it would be like, it'd be 2:00 and no one would be in the office, but besides, a handful of people. And, sometimes I get frustrated, but like, whatever. We didn't like, I wouldn't say that we like freaked out, because even sometimes, like as an organization as a whole, like, I think my mentality a lot was like, do anything at all costs, right? Just like sacrifice anything at all costs, which I also don't think is a healthy mindset. And you'll see burnout amongst like employees and even founders. Like, so I'm kind of, to some degree, I'm kind of glad that I didn't freak out about those things. But I don't know. I think also having like never really dealt with it too significantly. There's probably a couple instances that like we had issues and like those kind of resolved itself more or less, either like, going separate ways or whatever the case is. But outside of that, like once we hired our C-level executives, it wasn't as much of like me managing these people as it was like, you have someone that is a professional who like is a mentor and now your boss indirectly to me. Like if they don't have any bias, you're not necessarily their friend, right? You may be my friend, but really there's only a few people that like started off as like really good friends. Everyone else were like acquaintances, kind of knew, became friends through a movement, but like probably walked a line. Like, I definitely know that like, everything wasn't shared with me.
Right. Yeah. I could imagine there's also, when people are seeing that explosive growth around you, they try and obviously get closer to you guys to have, an advantage in the future, which is like just normal human behavior, I would imagine. So like do extra favors, do little gifts, whatever it might be, right? So that when the company's growing or whatever, I'm first in line for a promotion.
Yeah. I mean,
Jake's like, where's my gifts?
Yeah, no, I mean, I like thinking back of it, I probably, yeah, like there's probably employees that would, yeah, a holiday gift type of thing, a little knickknack or something, but yeah, I wouldn't think anything of that, to be honest. Like that wouldn't, like, I mean, yeah, that wasn't gonna move the needle or anything like that. You
Yeah.
know, for me, it was like, yeah, I mean, it was solely like, what can you produce, right? Like, you know, seeing people produce, and make a difference, come up with good ideas, like, you know, execute, work hard. Like those are all things that like I cared about.
Yeah. So for you, it sounds like it was more important than anything. It was always about performing in the business before the friendship. Like the friendship's important, but at the end of the day, you needed people that were productive and did their job well.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, like, I felt like, I think what I'm getting at is like, I felt like everyone did their job and some, like, I felt like everyone produced and did really well. But I always had the mindset of like, if there's an issue, like if someone's seriously preventing like movement in their function from growing, like, yeah, like that needs to be rectified, right? Like that's not okay. And like that could be anyone really. Like it didn't matter if it was a serious issue. Like the business doesn't care. I might care as a friend, but like the business doesn't care and our competitors don't care. You know, I wouldn't say that like we really had to be that ruthless, fortunately, because movement always continued to grow and never felt that pain while I was there. But like, yeah, I mean, that was my mindset. And you know, even hiring, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, like, dude, I think the bigger, you know, example is like when we first started, the amount of people and friends that were probably hitting me up interested in a job, or, you know, family members, or, and that I said no to a lot of people, partly because like, I mean, fortunately we didn't need to bring on a ton of people. Like we kind of hired very slowly for the most part. Like we didn't have that many people. Even at our peak, it was like, I don't know, 40 or 50 people. And we were like a 75, $80 million company. So it's not really that many. But yeah, like, you know, we wouldn't really, I kind of tried to avoid hiring friends or like, you know, family and stuff like that, just because like, I didn't want to be put in that position. You know, if it just happened naturally early days, like that was fine. What got us there, but you know, yeah, it's just like an uncomfortable place to be in. And whether it doesn't matter what's right or wrong, someone's going to be upset, and it's probably going to be that person who has that, like, you know, relationship with you. And that's, I don't know, I just don't want to deal with that.
So were you involved then in the majority of hires in your tenure at Movement?
Probably, yeah. I mean, like a lot of the I definitely interviewed everyone, I think.
Okay.
Pretty much 95% of the people I probably like at least had a interview interaction with. Even if it was like one final, just even if it's just for culture fit. But yeah, early days, like I'd say like, yeah, almost all the employees, it was like, let's all sign off on this person. Or like when I say all, like me and Kramer, let's like both make sure we, you know, which meant a lot of people who didn't make the cut, which was there's like a lot of interviews and meetings with people who, which was weird because, you know, I'm like 22 or not, probably 23, 24, interviewing, you know, grown men and women all over the country, you know, for a job. And it's like, it's just an interesting dynamic, you know. Some of them you can just tell don't give a shit or respect, you know, where you're headed or what you're doing. But the ones that did, and then also had the skill sets, I think were, you know, fortunately the ones that got the job.
How long typically was your hiring process? Like if you were to say like just a typical role where you're maybe paying a salary of some 60 to 100 grand. So not maybe like an executive, because it's obviously, I assume, a much lengthier process. But yeah, just maybe you know, some marketing person or someone in finance or whatever. Would it be a 1 month and all these hurdles and tests, or is it generally, let's go a week, gut instinct? Like, how did you guys get that? And then with that process, obviously it took many iterations to get it right. How often did you get it right? Like, was it 9 times out of 10, 5 times out of 10?
So, you know, it just depends on if from the time that we were ready to hire someone to the time that they were hired, it just depends on like if we already had people kind of in the funnel. So if we were like, oh, we need this marketing role, I already know like a person or two who might be interested and like I think is the right person, then I mean, it could be like, you know, 3 to 4 interviews, some with me, some with other people. One was just like with everyone, like a lunch or something with the team, and then making sure the team signs off on them. So that could be like, 2 to 4 weeks. Like, we didn't want to drag it out too much. It's like, if they're ready, let's go. But if you needed to like find people and source them and do a handful of candidates, like, I mean, it could be, as long as it took to find those people. Again, I think it could be a couple months to like really hone in on that. But once you had those people that you're like, one of these people is probably a fit, let's figure it out. It was probably like 3 to 4 interview related sessions, and that, maybe 2 to 4 weeks. We didn't really go through like, we really, I can't remember. I don't know that we fired many people at all. I think it was like really, we had some people who left, but like, I think that was probably an area where like, in retrospect, there might've been people who like didn't make sense, or, probably where we were scared to like lose that function and not have anything else that, to replace it. So those are probably little, I guess you can call them regrets, or just areas if I ever did something else where I'd, be like, hey, you'll figure it out just like you figure anything else out. Like, make sure you have like all stars that, because company culture, I think, is like a big thing. Like, are they producing, but also just like making sure the culture holistically is like, good and solid is really important.
Anything you did culture wise that you feel like was unique to movement and that was a bit of a special sauce? Like, did you, I don't know, have some like make them go through some hazing process or something? Or did you have like the famous movement Christmas party that was always a good thing, or anything you can think of?
I mean, like early days, we were young and partying. Like, we would go and party in LA, like after a holiday party, right? We'd go to like clubs and stuff. It was like early days. But now, or like not now, but like, I'm trying to think like what else. Like, I think just like what we did, I wouldn't say from I guess culture wise was just like our content. Like, it was kind of inclusive, like the whole team. It was like kind of like a mini TV show behind. We try and make sure that like we film stuff behind the scenes in the office, humanize the brand, make sure people could connect with people at the company. Which, like, I don't know that we did the best, but it was definitely like something that, no one else, could kind of do. Fossil or any of those other guys, Nixon, could kind of do as organically as we could. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one thing we'll switch gears into was obviously your ambassadors and your marketing through social media. That you're kind of the front runners, especially in the watch space at that time. Obviously, a huge advantage, and that's really where I think you crossed into our world. Is you sponsored Christian Guzman, who's obviously a famous fitness YouTuber. How did some of those ambassadors come about, and how did you play around with like, wow, YouTube outperforms Instagram? I mean, besides just data, like what were your instincts on that sort of stuff in terms of picking the best strategy for movement?
Oh,
It's a big question.
It's a long, I mean, it's just like a long time ago too. I think it was initially, it was like, I mean, just how even influencers started for us. It was like, you saw these people posting that the word influencer didn't exist. So it's just, hey, look at this Instagram. Look at this kid on Instagram posting, traveling the world and doing crazy things, hanging off of buildings. I wonder if he'd take a picture of a watch too on that side of a building, and, could we pay him, you think? So we DM him and he'd be like, yeah. And then we'd do it and we'd sell watches to him. Like, okay, what about bigger and bigger and bigger? And then you'd be going after like the biggest of celebrities. At one point we worked with Kylie Jenner. That was a massive thing. And then like, yeah, we started thinking about, okay, well, like, let's not like, let's make sure that we're on target on like the right demo and like have the right brand when it comes to who we work with. And that's where we got into the fitness thing. Cause like, especially I mean, everyone, I think in fitness, like, that's it. As much of it is like a healthy lifestyle thing. I think it's also, you care about, your aesthetically what you look like, right? Like, you want to look good, feel good, dress well, like kind of the whole thing. And then like, I also think just as a male and who, I mean, I work out every day. It's like, you look up to these guys who are like, have the physique that you want, or like, whatever it is, like, half the brands I wear are like athleisure, like brands that are, run by dudes kind of similar mindset. So it's like, there's definitely a aspirational piece of that, just like Nike or any of these other like fitness related athletic brands. So, it's an athlete kind of, and it just kind of like connected the dots. Like there's people that we have an affinity to, like those people that we see, you know, lifting weights, who are, you know, teaching us about, you know, the sport that they do, like, you know, the dedication. Like it just kind of just like almost like cohesively went, not only just me personally, but also like entrepreneurs, and I think just the demographic of people who, if you want a nice looking, fashionable anything, you probably also care about what you look like aesthetically, which means you probably work out to some degree, right? Like, so just connected. And that's kind of how we went into that world. And that world just, I mean, that was a test and it worked, and then like crushed it. And Christian Guzman, like obviously has an insane network of people. And Steve Cook has an insane network. We worked with him too. And, you know, a handful of others I'm missing. But yeah, kind of just, we started to think about it as that, like, who are these people's audience? What does this person identify? Like, who do we identify when like they're wearing movement, and if we were to like promote them on our accounts and so forth.
At the peak, do you remember how many ambassadors you had selling watches for you at the time?
I mean, no, not really. I mean, we had sent like a higher level, you know, call it, you know, 100K followers and above. I don't know, definitely hundreds, like,
Well,
you know, 200-300,
Wow.
maybe more. Probably more when it comes to the women's side. I mean, but we also we gifted watches. I mean, we've gifted thousands of watches over the years.
Yeah.
So to like small accounts, like 10K, 5K.
I want to
10K followers, sorry.
So I want to just I want to talk about the just switching gears a little bit, just coming back to the relationship with you and Kramer. When did the conversation come up with you and him that you started talking about an exit, or did it fall into your lap? Like, do you guys have like an annual just like founders meeting where you're like, dude, this is crazy. What do we want to do with this? Or like just trying to make sure that you were always on the same page, because I'm sure once you started seeing some of the numbers coming in, you're like, wow, this actually could start doing the maths going, oh, this could be like a huge exit for us. And like, maybe I'm not really enjoying it that much anymore. Maybe we should get out of this. When did that conversation, if it ever did, start coming up?
Yeah, I think like the self-awareness of like if I enjoyed it or what I enjoyed, like that, all that stuff didn't come until post-exit. Like there's been this whole like post-exit clarity for me that is a whole nother thing we could get into. But I think that in terms of like where the business was going, I mean, yeah, our revenue was like climbing, and it was like, okay, well, what, you know, every year it was like, we need to reinvest the money, but as you get bigger, you have more expenses. Typically you don't remain as profitable. So it was kind of like, where do we go? Where does this business go? You know, and ultimately, like, I think we both knew that like, we didn't want to do this forever. And even forever could be like, yeah, did we want to be in it for 10, 20 years? Like, probably not. So it was like, okay, well, you know, in most cases, like the best way for like founders to basically get some sort of you know, liquidity in their business is either sell the business to someone, or basically get an investor and take off what's called secondary. So, you know, primary would be like taking capital. If you raised, you know, call it 20 million, you can do, you know, primary would be like, well, how much do you want to put back into the business? Could be, call it, you know, 15 million. And then secondary would be like, okay, well, the 5 million, that's so that the founders can kind of like take a deep breath and relax, but also, you know, come up for air and like think about the business, you know, in a little bit more relaxed way, and also have the like motivation to continue to run the business for years to come, right? Like if you're running the business every day and, you know, you don't know that tomorrow is the day that like, you know, the economy is going to crash and you're going to be, you know, you're going to be the closing doors. Like that's just like a scary way to live, and probably not a healthy way. So anyways, like doing some sort of like private equity round was something that we were like thinking about. Selling was obviously like you know, would be something that we definitely wanted to entertain, but like, you can't like that's a complete different party that has to come and like, you know, work with you on that and be interested. So yeah, we went out to go like basically do some sort of like private equity, like, you know, capital raise, and through
Sorry,
that.
Jack, what year was this? Like, where were you in the timeline? Revenue year?
It was 2018, I think, and we
Okay.
were 75-ish, I think. Was that our
Okay.
year, million? And yeah, like that was the year that basically like, yeah, we were looking to raise, but then we started talking to Movado, and like it just, we realized that, hey, like one of the next steps for us is get capital to go and distribute in wholesale and retail accounts. That's what you guys do best. So like, for them who had interest in acquiring us, we were like, okay, that makes sense. Like that, they do what they do best, we do what we do, and like if we kind of join forces, we can use their resources and infrastructure to help accelerate movement. So it just, I think timing again, like, I think selling a business, like there's a lot of luck that even comes in. I mean, there's luck even in private equity. It's like, right now the markets are kind of shit because everyone's worried about, what's going to happen. And, people don't necessarily want to go and invest in a bunch of startups if it's hard to raise capital. Like when a startup can get more money, like every year, if they need more money, they can get it, that they're going to survive at least if it's temporarily, like they have a better chance of survival. But right now it's like, luck has something to play with all these things. So for us, yeah, they were interested, and timing was right, and it was the right buyer, and yeah.
And had your life changed like financially up until that moment, or had you just grinded away in the $10,000 a month office, trying to grow the business?
I mean, I was like living in a nice apartment, like nothing that like, wasn't out of reach for someone who had a nice 6-figure job in Los Angeles, like, I mean, at the time, like I took without getting into too much detail, like I was probably making like 140K a year. I think it was probably what we were paying, maybe a little bit more than that. And then, which in LA, like, I think like you need to make like 70K in LA to like survive, or is what I read, or some shit like that. Like, I don't know if that's true, but like survive comfortably, probably, right? Like, so like, yeah, 140, 100, maybe it was like closer to 200. And then like we took off a distribution 1 year, which like, I think we like, yeah, we had some money that we, but nothing like, not like just enough that it was like, if everything went to shit, like we had a cushion. Right. But again, like I had come from, watching my parents' business go under, and they had a cushion, and that cushion ran out after. It's not like, so like I kept like, I always lived below my means, like, because I just knew like one day, rainy day. So yeah, no, until that point, it wasn't like a life-changing thing. And then the sale hits, and like the next day you wake up and you look at your bank account, and there's like crazy numbers in there, and you're just like, holy shit. Now in the United States, in California specifically, there's like a massive, you lose like 50+% of it. But still, it's an absolutely crazy, euphoric moment. But the interesting thing was like, yeah, you wake up, you get that moment, and then you're like, okay, well, like now what? Okay, I'm going back to work. Like we're still grinding away. We're still doing what we're doing. Like, yeah, I can go buy a bigger, a condo now instead of this apartment, which like, yeah, in a year from now I did. And then it's like your life doesn't change all that drastically right away. It's like that instant gratification you probably anticipate feeling, like it comes up and then it goes down. And like once it's down, like you'll never, unless you go and start another company, you'll never have that same dopamine peak. Like that was just like an absolute crazy, like, I don't know, explosion of like my social circle. Just everyone reached out to me, people who I haven't talked to in literally decades. My fifth grade teacher, who I hadn't seen since 5th grade, messaged me on Facebook. Like, I heard about this. Like people who like, I mean, I couldn't open my phone to text, my Instagram, my emails, like phone call. Like I couldn't talk to anyone for like weeks, besides the people that I intentionally was like, okay. And I go back, and also I had to go back in the office and work. So it was just, how do you get to that point again? Like, unless you win that big again, you kind of don't. And that's, yeah, that's been like chapter 2, I guess, of like post exit of the lessons I've learned, and like had to like think about different life differently, and just, but anyways, yeah, that was like an interesting perspective.
It's interesting to hear you say like you live so far below your means, especially because you were like in a particular industry. Like it's different if you like were, doing back end IT software, connecting like this software with that software and optimizing this. Not like a really flashy kind of business, but you could be making crazy money. Whereas like it seems like I mean, I could be wrong here, but you didn't go and have to show the world how well you're doing, Maybe you kind of always felt, because it sounds like of the experience you had with your dad, that it's like it can actually go away way, like that vulnerability of knowing it can happen. It's like if you've ever had a serious injury lifting, right? It's like fuck, you don't set your back properly until like you're reckless with the deadlift until you've really hurt your back. And then like it's always there. You're like, fuck, I need to do this properly because I know how bad it can get. And you had that experience so young that you were like, I can't get crazy with this money. Cause I imagine there's so many young founders out there, especially because you were so young, right? It's like you see 25, 30 million, 50 million hit the bank account. And it's like, dude, let's just pull heaps of this money out and just like buy houses and do crazy shit. And like, I'm sure there's so many founders out there that live above their means just to kind of show people that they're more successful than they are, or just to validate themselves. I mean, did you like looking back now post exit, you're thankful you had that experience so that maybe you weren't one of those founders? You probably see it a lot with a lot of founders making those mistakes.
Oh, dude. I mean, it's honestly, and I told you before this, I'm leaving LA. Like, that's kind of one of the reasons I'm leaving, is because, I mean, LA is like in my opinion, is like one of the best marketed cities from like Hollywood and Instagram and Dan Bilzerian. And like, it just looks like everyone's crushing it, doing well. But like, I mean, yeah, like, fortunately, like I've done better than a lot of like people that in a network that I know, and like they're way flashier and you would imagine it are doing better. And it's just like, I think also, not identifying, like not having something that you accomplished or done be like how you identify who you are, if that makes sense. So like, and even going to lifting and using lifting and business, it's like, yeah, movement was something I did. Selling and having money is something that like I've accomplished, but like, that's not who I am. Like, it just gives me access to go and like live a life that I want, and like have experiences. I value experiences, people, health, like, like really people and like friends, family, and like, deep relationships are what I care about. And having money to go and like facilitate trips or live or travel or whatever it is, or help people, like those are things that like, I identify more, internally. And then even fitness, man, it's like, I mean, like I'm a decent size now. When I was younger, I was like, one of the bigger guys, like never I never like competed, but like, I was always like at a naturally big build. But, as you get older, even it's like, that's like I don't know if depreciating assets the right word, but like it's tough to like stay big forever. And if you identify yourself as like, if you work out to look good, to be the big guy, bro, I mean, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. Like, yeah, you can go and take, tren or like testosterone or something, and like, which is like whatever, like it's fine too. But like, it's if that's the only reason you work out, like you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. And I struggled with that too, where like I kind of changed my outlook with all that, and kind of looked at it more of like, okay, well, like, yeah, there's some vanity to working out, right? Like everyone wants to look, good with their shirt off type of thing. But at the same time, like you also want to do it because it makes you fucking feel great. Like it's going to help you live longer, feel better, be more active, experience life a certain way, age better, like all like, and that's just all health related things. Now that's great. And I think that should be like the core of why you do it. Like feel like shit, depressed, mental health shit, like working out is going to help you with that. And then also like, you're going to look good as well. Right. But like, if you only hold yourself to like the status of like how you looked at a certain age and a certain physique, like it's just tough, man. Like how you like, it's father time that's gonna, it's always gonna win. It does with every single athlete ever, every single competitor. And yeah, you look at some of these competitors who are like miserable and hurting now because they put their body through fucking shit. And even entrepreneurs, like it's kind of like a term I learned is called it's called the hedonic treadmill. And it's like a lot of founders and athletes and people, they have this success which they identify, right? Like, oh, that's a win. Your movement, you sold for, X, Y, and Z, like, and you get this big win and it goes away and you're like, well, I got to get a big win again. Right. And but this time, like that big win has to be bigger. Like you have to like almost outdo yourself. Otherwise it's not going to feel as good. And like, if you ask anyone, that second time, like doesn't feel as good. Right. And then you have to go bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you're just chasing things that are literally external. They're for other people. They're for validation. And it has nothing to do with, what you actually value. And it just becomes a distraction. And truthfully, I think some people live their entire lives on that hamster wheel and never ever figure it out and have the self-realization. And if there's anything I'm grateful and fortunate about, is that the exit allowed me to kind of have this place where I went into this like mental health, depressed, anxious, like kind of hole for a bit, trying to figure out who and why, like what's my purpose, like just so confused. And like I was able to come out of it only somewhat recently, to be honest, in the last year, and really be like, be content with who I was, and that like you don't have to define like who you are today. It's like an ongoing process. People reinvent themselves all the time. And just understanding a little bit about like who I was even at Movement, what I enjoyed about the business and growth, what relationship I have with money, like just all these different things that I don't know, a lot of people just don't get to like experience.
Man, it sounds a lot like hearing you talk about that experience post exit off that big win, like a lot of athletes, right? When they win the World Cup, or they, win the Champions League, or they basically achieve whatever the dream was as a kid. And then there's that dip afterwards, that depression, where it's like a lot of fighters have it as well. They talk about they win the belt and they're finally the world champion. And then it's like, I woke up the next day and it was the most miserable I'd ever been, because I had no purpose anymore. And it kind of almost sounds like you went through that soul searching process. So
it almost seems, I was going to say, it almost seems worse in business in some ways, because at least with athletics, they're like, I understand you're not going to win another soccer World Cup. Whereas I guess in kind of business, like if you do anything that still is a great business, but is just smaller than Movement, people would kind of look at it from the outside as well. Oh, well, it's just like smaller. It's like worse than what you used to be in some ways, even like, and you have like your whole lifetime to keep trying.
Yeah, dude. It's like, I mean, I compare it to sports all the time. I look at like Michael Phelps, right? He literally is the most, accoladed like athlete ever. And he had to win, he won like 18 gold medals or something crazy. And yeah, he's more depressed than ever. And yeah, it's just tough, man. I mean, I think you literally are conditioned your entire life, especially as an athlete, you're conditioned your entire life to winning in, a championship, World Cup, gold medal, as like the like life will be amazing. You'll never be happier. But like that's just not that's not like what life's entirely about. Like those accomplishments have some fundamentals in it. And then like, yeah, business, it's just tough, man. I mean, everyone's different. That's the thing. Some people enjoy the grind. They enjoy leading. They enjoy growing their businesses. It's sometimes I think it's hard to tell if those people are fooling themselves or not. It's like, because you're always sacrificing something, man. Like if you're running a business or you're an athlete competing, like you're sacrificing, either potential time with your family, you're sacrificing potential, health related things, relationships and friends and memories. It's just like, some people are just willing to, like, that's worth it to them. It's like, even like Tom Brady, right? Like, and I don't know how much you guys hear about it over there, but it's like, the guy retired and then came back.
Yeah.
Now he's getting a divorce. It's like, but, and
he's
I
getting
don't know,
divorced
like,
now.
he's getting divorced.
And he's lost 2 games back to back. So it's a bad month.
Fuck.
It's a weird place for him to be, but it's like, I think I look at it now, I'm like, okay, well, like if I was him, am I self-aware to be like, listen, I'm the best to ever do it. And like, this is just an experience where like, if I have to go, if I have to like, kind of like whatever, like my family, it's a sacrifice of my family potentially. And a sacrifice for my kids and my wife, like to do this thing that like brings me so much joy that I want to do right now. Like, is that worth it? Like, if you're self-aware and it's like worth it, great. Like, I think I always look up to like, Kobe Bryant, because it's like, he was able to like really reinvent himself in so many different, facets post the game of basketball. Right. And, then I just thought that was like pretty fascinating to watch, because it felt like for such a guy who had such a competitive edge, where you and dedicates so like almost exclusively time to like, a work ethic towards a goal that once that goal disappears, you can't achieve that. Like you're retired, the goal's gone. It's weird to like find that same sense of like fulfillment. But I think what he did well is like, and I think it's a lesson to even myself and other people. It's like he had his family, like he had other interests that he was working on before he retired. It wasn't like cold turkey, what are you doing today? Right. Like, so I don't know. It's a tough, because also I think like what makes people great too is sometimes that level of ambition and like hustle and, trying to just like kind of outsmart the competition. I don't know that you always have to outwork them all the time, like, but you do, trying to be smarter than them and figure out ways to like really excel. And I don't know, it's like, I don't know that anyone has ever figured it out like fully, but it is like something that I think I'm so much more self-aware of. And when I talk to founders or anyone for that matter, it's like, just make sure that like, first off, like enjoy the wins, right? Like you have to enjoy the process. And then it's like such an overplayed term at this point, but like that truly is part of it in anything. It's like, if you're working out to look a certain way, like you've already lost, because you're going to look that way, you're going to have it. And then like, you're going to age either out of it or whatever the case is. Or if you only work hard for that exit, same thing, where like enjoying the process, the camaraderie, the team, like you have to find some way to enjoy it to some degree, so that like you just keep your mental health in like in a stable place. So yeah.
Did you have a relationship through this thing? Like you mentioned wife and kids. Have you got a wife and kids?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Which is probably like I mean, yeah, I mean, it was probably like, it's funny. Today on the dot, I got like one of those memories of an Instagram where it's like 10 years ago, you posted this. And the quote was like, it used to be my favorite quote. It was like, sacrifice, or entrepreneurship is sacrificing 5 years of your life like no one will, so you can live the rest of your life like no one can. And I used to absolutely love that quote. And I still think that quote is meant for like this, like get off your ass and hustle and, and do things at all costs. But at the same time, like that quote and that mindset kind of put me in this vibe of like, nothing else matters, like nothing, like time, family, like health, like, and I missed out on some things that I probably didn't have to, and like sacrifice some things and kind of convince myself of like this all or nothing mindset, which I think like had things been different, and again, I've talked about it, timing and luck had something to do with it. Like, how I would have like handled it from a mental health aspect could have been bad. I mean, I had a successful exit, and I was like, fucking, I would have paid, any amount of money to figure out a way to like resolve it, dude. I mean, I was doing ketamine therapy. I was going to therapy twice a week, journaling, like, I was like just in a deep kind of dark place. And I think a lot of people get there for all sorts of reasons. And like, I'm fortunate that it was like selling a company like for a lot of money. Like I'm definitely fortunate for that, but like I'm self-aware, but like that also like almost made it like, I'd be sitting there like, why the fuck am I depressed right now? I'm lit, like I have it, like this is what I always wanted. But that was kind of it, is like you put so much pressure, or so much like, and you anticipate such a euphoric, crazy dopamine hit of like joy in this like destination that you want to get to, and then in anything you get there and it's just not it, and it's not, and then like what comes next is just like you kind of question everything, like you have this existential like quarter life crisis, more or less. So again, I don't know that I have like a specific answer outside of like finding things outside of just, that one thing that like brings you purpose, and like having, and when I say purpose, not that brings you fulfillment, not purpose. Like purpose can change, year to year, right? Like today, my purpose could be running a business. Next year, it could be raising, a kid. I don't know. Like it's just totally different. So, but I don't know. I think but like doing some self work, right? Like journaling, therapy, like all those things that like, I don't know how they're looked at over there. In the United States, it's becoming more and more like accepted. And like, I talk about it all the time because there used to be a bad stigma around it, but like, I like to talk about it. And, you see these like Gary V hustle culture, like, which I agree with. Those are like for people who like need to get off the couch and like figure their shit out. And like, it was motivating at one point, but like, Gary V probably doesn't have a great family dynamic, not to like talk bad about any of that, but like, like you can't work that hard and like dedicate and sacrifice all these things and have all aspects of your life, you know, be balanced. And I think like for people who already grind and work their asses off, you need to think, you actually think we probably have to do a better job at like, you know, disconnecting. Because I truthfully believe that like taking time away from whatever it is that you do as it's like a rest day and working out. I mean, it all comes back to like working out. You fucking take a couple rest days, like muscle's going to build, you're going to come back, you're going to be stronger. Like if you don't take those rest days, a vacation, spend time, make memories, enjoy life, like you're just going to burn out. You're not going to be as creative. Like it's just so funny how like the pendulum swings in terms of like 4 hours of sleep, fucking, you know, people doing all these crazy shit to like, you know, stay fucking energized and coffee and this. And now it's like, don't drink caffeine past noon, get a good night's sleep. Like it's just, but that's the truth of it. Like it's like,
It's true,
keep your mind right. Keep your mind right. And like, you know, you're gonna be better off.
Do you think that you were showing signs of the potential crash, the anxiety, the depression that you found yourself in after the exit? Did you see it coming to a head, reflecting on it when you were in the business, kind of before the exit, with just the behaviors you were doing, or were you just so in it at the time that it wasn't possible for you to reach that state?
Yeah, I mean, I think year one, I actually had this massive anxiety attack. Kind of like, I guess you could say it was like drinking and alcohol and like drug related. And then the next day I like fucking woke up and had this massive anxiety attack. And that turned into like, that was year one of the business. And it turned into this like month-long anxiety disorder where I couldn't leave the house. Like driving, I had anxiety. I couldn't look people in the eye. I could barely email, let alone like get on a call with someone. Like,
Oh shit.
it was gnarly. Ended up doing all this like therapy and all this shit. And like, you know, got on medication, like got it resolved. But like, well, I wouldn't say resolved. I probably put a Band-Aid on it and kind of like managed it up until post exit. And I'd say the reason what you just said resonates in terms of, yeah, did it come up throughout the experience, was I just had such a like locked in, nothing else matters, right? Like all or nothing, you know, it was just so hyper focused, which like, again, I think like it can be good, but like, I don't think that I really chose the rest days the right way. And you guys said it right in the beginning, man. I'm being so young, I'm learning about myself through the process. And when your identity at that age is your business, right? Like Jake from Movement, or, you know, whatever, like an athlete, like that's who you are in your, you know, kind of adult life, more or less in your 20s. Like it's a weird thing to disassociate from. So I probably felt it when, yeah, I didn't know who I was, what I actually cared about. Cause like the whole time I was like almost answering things as Jake from Movement, right? Like it was like, yeah, what do you see yourself doing? Like, you know, one of the biggest things everyone said to me was like, oh, you'll start something else. Like everyone's, you know, all entrepreneurs start something else. And I'd always be like, I don't know if I will. And like, if I even did, why would I? And like, yeah, as I sit here now, man, it's like, you know, I have no interest in like starting another like fast, like going through a fast growth company. As I sit here today, could change. Like the things I've thought about, you know, honestly have been like, do I want to open a gym? Like, do I want to do a restaurant? Do I want to do things that literally have nothing that, like, businesses that I probably wouldn't open for financial gain as much, like probably not the best financial businesses, but like things that give me purpose that I truthfully enjoy. So where to your guys' point, like, yeah, people are going to be like, what the hell? Like, why would he open that business? He's not going to make, you know, he's not going to make the same amount of money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't have to, right? You've done that.
Yeah.
But what about, I'm curious, you're saying all this stuff. What about Kramer? How did he handle the exit? I don't want you to speak, obviously, only for what you know, but did he go through the same sort of lost crisis, or he handled it a bit better?
I think he had a lot more like, he had a lot more interests, like hobbies and interests. He's also married now. So he like, you know, found someone. I think that gave him a lot of like purpose. You know, we probably don't go into things as deep. Like we're different in that area. Like I don't think, you know, again, not to speak on behalf of him, but like, I don't think he had, I've never really heard him talk about like mental health related things personally, where like I've definitely been like a little bit more of an open book. And yeah, some people just get hit with mental health stuff and some people
Yeah.
don't. So yeah, I think he just had a lot of interest though. Like I think that was one thing that I think he did great. Like, loved like action sports. He's a pilot now. He'd be going on trips as the girlfriend, like golfs. Like he just does so much stuff where like I literally felt like I've been an entrepreneur. I mean, since my first business at 16, it was like
Yeah.
entrepreneur Jake, business card, this, that. Like, I kind of didn't even try to do anything else because I just, all I cared about was like that financial, freedom more or less.
Mhm. Do you find now, like, do you have a partner now, like a fiance or girlfriend?
No, no, still like, I mean, dating in LA is tough, man. So, but I'm looking, it's like, I'm ready for that chapter for sure. It's just, yeah, I mean, I think, but honestly, I'm glad that I'm in the position because I will say that like, I've even heard people be like, oh, like, this person saved me, right? Or having a kid saved my life, for people who are lost or whatever. Um, and I get it. It's like, yeah, you can find purpose in a relationship, you can find purpose in a kid and raising someone or a dog even, like, but I've not intentionally with the relationships, but like I haven't been able to find that person, and I don't have kids and I don't have like a dog or anything. So it's like I've been able to find, identify who I am as a person outside of, I'm not attaching that to anyone else, because even like marriage, man, like that's not a forever thing. There's death, there's divorce. Like you find that, like, that's midlife crisis type shit, right? It's people who like are codependent to their partner. They go through divorce and they're like, who the fuck am I? Like those were our friends. This was our restaurant. Like these are our kid. Like it just changes your whole, like I'm fortunate I went through it now. I'm 31 years old. It's like, not that say I've been through really a lot of shit, because I haven't, but like it's given me some perspective on identifying like who I am alone, as a person, which I think everyone, that's why I just think traveling alone, like being alone, journaling, like all those things I mentioned, man, I think everyone should do that shit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what the reason I brought that question up, because I was curious, why you're in such a unique position that so many people will never experience, that are in long-term relationships, is that so many people get into those relationships for needs outside of, what a relationship should be. And what I mean is, like, maybe we accidentally had a kid together, so we're stuck raising them together, right? Or it's like, I can't really afford the bills or whatever, and it's easier if I have a partner and we share the financial load, right? Or my family, our families know and they want us to be together. You're in this position where you can, like, from the most purest sense, you have just like unlimited time in some ways, right? You don't have to, like, I don't have to show up for work and do this thing. There's no incentives pulling you any way except, like, do I like this person? Probably the only thing you have to consider is, like, are they just trying to get my cash? But I guess if
Yeah.
they've got cash, then it doesn't really matter. But it is a unique position you find yourself in. I'm sure you reflected on it. You seem pretty self-aware that, like, you will just find this person and be able to, like, really objectively be like, is this actually the right person? Because I don't need really anything else from anyone.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it's I mean, in some elements it's all relative, dude. Like I think, I'm like, yeah, I think given like I've lived such a unique life already, it's like having someone that can like fit into that is like, who isn't just in it for like money and like the right reasons, is probably not an easy thing. I gotta imagine, right? I probably hold like a certain, probably challenging to even date, me who like, yeah, it's like, because I feel like, um I don't know, because I am self-aware of like, yeah, this like I am happy alone, I guess is my point, where I'm like, I am so content in my life right now, where it's like, yeah, it's probably hard to find something that like fits into that, because I'm not looking for something to just, oh, it's time, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm working a bunch, like I need this to just like, to be my sense of purpose. But I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to like, I don't remember what it's like. It's like, this is my only life. So it's like, this is like what I know. It's like, I think about other people and like what it might be like if I was, grinding, and like, would I feel the pressure? Like probably. I mean, yeah, I'm able to like go and work out every single day. And, yeah, I have other responsibilities, but like if I was working out, or if I was working, thinking about money, would I be able to work out as long as I, or would I even have the energy to work out as much as I do, like, and look good and like have all the, and like focus on the, like dating takes time, dude. I mean, it's just like, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I mean, again, I'm grateful for the position that I'm in for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, man, we've clocked up some serious minutes here and gone really deep. And I'm sure if we did one in person, if you do plan to venture to Oz in the future, we'll probably go even deeper. But man, I really appreciate you sharing everything and you know, the nuggets of wisdom. Obviously, a lot of self-interested questions there with us growing our company. So, Jake, if you're doing anything in the future, can people find you? Are you on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok? Where can people find you?
Just Instagram right now really is probably the best place to reach me. So just Jake Kassan at me.
Nice. Perfect.
Nice one.
Nonchalant.
What gym do you train at?
So right now I go to Equinox in LA, and I go to 2 in LA, Equinox and Barry's. Barry's like a hit training one, but Barry's I love. Equinox in LA, like I'm not a fan of really almost any of them. I think they're all trash. They're just like, if you come, again, if you guys come out here, they're just, especially on Santa Monica and like Marina Del Rey on the west side, they're just like not well kept gyms for the price you're paying. But in San Diego, there's one that I'm going to called Fit Athletic, which is like all like new equipment, kind of like more of a like athletic, and it's called Fit Athletic, but it's like they got like turf and like all the brand new Woodway treadmills and like just the, you know, skiers and everything. So it's like just definitely a sick atmosphere. If you guys are ever down there, you got to check it out.
Yeah,
Cool.
for sure. Well, we'll show you our gyms when you come out to Oz.
Yeah.
So,
Where you got? Are you guys in Sydney? Where are you guys at?
we're in Sydney. We're
Oh,
in
yeah.
Sydney.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks for jumping on the podcast, and yeah, hopefully see you in person very soon.
Epic.